Is there no answer that will satisfy me? If you get it right, I'll do anything for you. Even groveling, anything at all. The room was buzzing with noise as the crowd gathered for the social event. Some people were puzzled by the meaning of the question she posed, while others were fixated on the part where she said she'd do anything. Her face, usually known as Ice Queen and feared by everyone, was cold and expressionless. Scanning the crowd from the stage in a way that made it clear this was no light-hearted party trick, I broke through the tension and started walking toward the stage where she stood. As I spoke while walking, murmurs spread through the room. Then someone muttered, "Isn't he a middle school graduate? My name is Ryan. I've been working in sales at this long-established stationery company for about 6 months. Well, technically, it's been 6 months since I became a full-time employee. I was confident in my stamina and my ability to face people head-on, but I still wasn't used to the peculiarities of the corporate world. Seriously, with times being this tough, why did they hire a new guy? They should have used that money to raise our salaries." No kidding. I hear stuff like this said behind my back, loud enough for me to catch. They're venting their frustrations over how tough sales are. And I'm the perfect target for that. In a way, I'm somewhat famous at this company. That's because I joined in a rather unusual way. I was originally hired as a part-time stockroom assistant here. And yes, I was a middle school graduate. I didn't go to high school, so I worked desperately. Thanks to the support of the people around me, I earned my high school equivalency diploma, then went from temp to contract worker, and finally, a full-time employee. Those who knew me from my part-time days were genuinely happy for me. I, too, felt like I was standing at a new starting line and enthusiastically began my new life. But what awaited me was an environment that felt like a completely different company. So, the rumor is that the middle school graduate is in our department? Seriously, where do we even start with him? Teaching him how to greet people? How to turn on a computer? Well, he's full of energy, so let's just use him however we can. This was how my first day of my new life began. And while I still endure the constant snide remarks, I'm desperately trying to prove myself. Maybe my seniors are just using me. Every day is overtime. But I had no choice but to tough it out. Today, I had packed my schedule with outside visits from the morning and rushed back to the office around noon. I always bring my lunch, so I try to return to the office for lunch whenever possible. As I caught my breath and stepped into the elevator, a woman was already inside. I bowed slightly and reached to press the button for the floor, but the button for the sales department was already lit. I glanced at her. Not a wrinkle on her suit, which hugged her figure perfectly, paired with high heels. She had her hair tucked behind one ear, and a beauty mark near her lips. Anyone could tell she was stunning. But there was a daunting aura around her that made her seem unapproachable. As I shifted to keep a respectful distance, she suddenly spoke up. "You're Ryan from the sales department, right?" "Ha!" "Yes." While I was wondering if she was someone related to sales whom I didn't know, she flipped through her binder without looking at me and continued. "The entrance area can have external visitors, so don't rush in so carelessly like that." Sensing my confusion, she looked up at me coldly and added, "Do you not even understand what I'm saying?" "Ah, no. I'm sorry." Before I could finish, the elevator stopped, and she clicked her heels as she walked out. Still wondering who she was, I made my way to the office, but the answer would soon become clear. As soon as I stepped into the office, I could feel the tension in the air.
No one was speaking, and everyone was staring at her as she stood rigidly in front of our supervisor, James.
James, I thought I made it clear that you were to report back once the selection was finalized? Ah, well, Sophia, isn't there anything you can do about this? There's nothing to be done. That was the point of this discussion. Anyway, it's already settled. I've made the decisions myself. With that, she turned on her heel and walked briskly to the center of the office. After taking a quick glance around, she began to speak in a calm and collected manner that none of us had expected. Everyone, thank you for your hard work. I'm Sophia from the HR department. A personnel transfer has been decided for the sales department. And since James seems to be quite busy, I'll deliver the news myself. The office immediately erupted into murmurs. A sudden personnel transfer? This was completely unexpected. So, Sophia was from HR. And judging by James's reaction, she seemed to wield considerable influence. As she flipped through her clipboard, someone whispered, "It's her book of judgment. Daniel and Chris, you will be transferred to the second marketing department starting next week. Please complete the handover by the end of this week." That is all. Without changing her expression, she closed the book of judgment and walked out of the office. The sound of someone slamming a desk echoed in the room. It was probably one of the two who had just been informed about their transfer. I stood there in a daze, stunned by how suddenly this had all unfolded. As I quietly ate my lunch, I overheard the senior staff gossiping. Sophia was the head of the HR department, a graduate from a prestigious university, and the CEO's daughter. As I had sensed, she was incredibly beautiful, and apparently, she had many admirers within the company. However, due to her ruthless approach to personnel management, she was secretly referred to as Ice Queen. So that's why they call her the Ice Queen, and the clipboard she carries is the Book of Judgment. I silently prayed that the elevator incident from earlier wasn't written in that book. However, after work that day, while I was staying late for overtime, Ice Queen appeared again. I sensed someone behind me, and when I turned around, there she was, standing elegantly with her book of judgment in hand. Her gaze coldly fixed on me. "Ah, Sophia? Good evening. Are you working overtime, Ryan?" "Ah, well, yeah. I had some things that were asked of me." "I see." How long had she been watching? Whether out of fear or nervousness, I watched as Sophia opened the Book of Judgment. She glanced at my computer screen and began to speak in her usual detached tone. "You're terribly inefficient. I reviewed your performance records in preparation for this personnel decision. Your sales efforts aren't contributing to revenue. From the company's perspective, if you can't complete your work without overtime, that's a liability. I'm sorry." Before I could finish my apology, she stood up straight. "I had something to inform you about, Ryan." I already had a feeling it wasn't going to be anything good, but her words hit me harder than I expected. Without looking at me, she continued in a matter-of-fact tone. "To be honest, you were initially the candidate for the transfer. However, as per our company policy, employees must stay in the same department for at least a year. In other words, you've only been spared by the rules. Your current approach to sales doesn't generate profits. Remember, you're always being evaluated. That is all." The sound of her heels echoed through the dim office as she walked away, embodying her Ice Queen to the fullest. Yet, she had come to warn me. If things continued as they were, I would be the next one. In other words, she was telling me to change my ways. Caught between company culture and my own beliefs, I felt a headache coming on. With a mix of emotions, I gulped down an energy drink and went back to my overtime work.
The next morning, I woke up feeling like my whole body was made of lead. My vision was blurry, and I couldn't move at all. Somehow, I managed to take my temperature, and it was clear that I had a fever. I thought if I could just get to the office, I might be able to push through, but even standing up was a struggle with the fever. Reluctantly, I called the office and informed them that I was taking the day off. I thought I was in pretty good health. I muttered to myself, staring at the ceiling as my consciousness started to fade again. Not long after, the intercom rang, waking me up. I didn't think I could get up, but I couldn't ignore the persistent ringing. Crawling to the monitor, I thought I was still dreaming. Standing there was Sophia. "Hello? Oh, good. You're there. Sorry, but can you let me in?" My mind was still foggy. Unable to process how strange the situation was, I clung to the wall as I walked to open the door. I caught a glimpse of her face through the crack. It was the same as yesterday, but her expression quickly changed. I don't remember much of what happened next. Sophia dragged me back to my bed, and just when I thought she had left, she returned with a pile of drinks and other items. She helped me take some medicine. I remember a cold, comforting sensation on my forehead. With that vague feeling, I drifted back into sleep. When I woke up again, there was a damp towel on my forehead, medicine and a drink on the side table, and a pleasant smell wafting from the kitchen. My head finally started to clear up. What? Wait, what? As I sat up, holding my head, Sophia came running over, now without her jacket on. "You're awake. Hold on, let me check your temperature. Good, it seems to have gone down." She placed her hand on my forehead. Up close, Sophia's face was as beautiful as ever, and now she wore an unexpectedly gentle smile. After what happened yesterday, I decided to check in on the sales department. Turns out, there was a flood of inquiries. And when I asked for details, they were all from your clients. They said they had no idea why you were out. I instinctively reached for my phone. But Sophia stopped me, blocking me with her whole body. No, it's fine. I immediately figured that they probably weren't properly informed on the other side. Given the situation, it's an exception. But I came to check on you myself. I see. My head was spinning with thoughts about work, the embarrassment of showing this side of me to Sophia from HR, and the fact that this Sophia, who seemed like a completely different person from yesterday, was now taking care of me. Sensing my turmoil, Sophia spoke to me in a serious tone. "Don't worry about the inquiries. The real issue is the sheer number. Ryan, just how many clients are you handling?" The numbers in the reports I received were nowhere near this. I hesitated to tell the truth. But Sophia's gaze told me she already knew. "I've taken on some of the clients from my seniors as well." I thought so. Sophia put her hand on her forehead and let out a deep sigh. "But I haven't been given any of the major clients yet, so I decided to just take it as it comes. If they're using me, I'll just have to prove them wrong someday. You've made some contracts yourself, right? But those successes aren't being credited to you. You're working yourself to the bone. I've heard this has been a trend in the sales department for a long time. This really needs to be addressed," she said, reaching into her bag and pulling out that familiar clipboard. "Ryan, I saw your resume from your part-time days. Your grades in middle school were at a national level.
Getting free access to classes and mock exams at prep schools isn't something just anyone can do. You wrote that you wanted to support your household because you were raised by a single mother. I wrote a lot of things to get hired. It's a bit embarrassing how desperate I sounded, haha. That part of you probably hasn't changed since you were a kid. After a brief silence, Sophia stood up and walked to the kitchen. She returned shortly after, carrying a bowl with a comforting smell. It was rice porridge with egg and a side of pickled plum. Watching her move so efficiently, I froze in place. Sophia scooped up some porridge with a spoon, blew on it to cool it down, and brought it to my mouth. Here, open wide. Say ah. No, no. I can eat on my own. What are you talking about? No, it's an order from your superior. Now, ah. She brought the spoon and the bowl so close to my mouth that Sophia's face was right in front of mine. She stared at me with a slightly pouty expression, her eyes looking up at me as I hesitated to open my mouth. The thought of Sophia, nursing me like this made me feel like my fever might spike again. She lightly touched the spoon to my lips, and I reached the limit of how long I could keep my mouth shut. Oh, it's delicious. Good. You know, cooking for someone who usually cooks for themselves takes quite a bit of courage. Come on, keep eating. Opening my mouth and letting her feed me, I quickly finished the bowl in no time. As I watched Sophia smile at me after I finished eating, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still dreaming. She tucked me in and placed a cool towel on my forehead. From the corner of my eye, I could see her kind face, but then her expression changed. I noticed it when I first came in. What's that postcard on the shelf? It looks like it's from a long time ago. On the shelf was a watercolor postcard of a castle, a famous local landmark. Oh, I got that when I was a kid. Just before I started middle school, I was trying to find ways to help support my family. So, I used to volunteer as a sort of tour guide for visitors. It wasn't a paid job, but sometimes they'd give me tips. One of the people I guided was so pleased that they bought the postcard and wrote a message on the back for me. I started doing it for my family. But it made me so happy. I still keep it on display. I see, that explains a lot. Ha! Seeing my puzzled face, Sophia smiled as she replaced the towel on my forehead. Remember how I mentioned all the inquiries we got this morning? Most of them were from local shops and small businesses. They were all saying, Ryan didn't show up today. Is something wrong? Ah, yeah. I make it a point to check in with them every day except on weekends. It may not bring in large profits, but now I understand what kind of person you are. Sophia said as she adjusted the towel, lightly touching my forehead. Leave it to me. Ha! She gave me a small smile and then left. My mind was still a mess, but my stomach was full, my head cooled, and I soon fell back asleep. The next morning, feeling completely recovered, I was set to go to work in the afternoon. As I headed to the office, thinking about how to catch up on yesterday's work and how I needed to thank Sophia, I walked into a tense atmosphere. Sophia was there, too. Unlike last night, she was back in her usual ice queen mode, giving orders to James. It didn't seem like the right time to interrupt, but I couldn't just ignore the situation, so I waited for my chance to speak up. James, I apologize for the trouble I caused the other day. I'm fine now. Good morning, Sophia. Did something happen? James looked like he had no energy left to speak. Sophia, however, began to explain in her usual calm tone. After seeing the situation yesterday,
we initiated an investigation into the sales department. It appears that task dumping and credit stealing have been common practices for quite some time.
No. It's part of training the newcomers, you see. I was taught the same way by my seniors.
At that point, James covered his mouth with his hand. Cold sweat was starting to drip down his face as he realized he had said too much. Sophia watched him with a cold, piercing gaze.
I see.
Well, it looks like the personnel reform was necessary after all. Ryan, it seems you were bearing the brunt of these practices. The two who were using you have been issued transfer orders. There's no need for a handover.
As for the client assignments, James, I trust you'll handle this properly? James kept wiping his sweat and bowing repeatedly.
I glanced around the office, noticing that the seniors who had been offloading their work onto me were already gone.
Their desks left in a chaotic state. Still processing this sudden turn of events, I bowed and headed to my desk.
I could hear various murmurs around me. Those guys were a pain, always acting high and mighty.
They couldn't even do their jobs properly. But 4 transfers in 2 days? The 2 today basically got demoted. Isn't that a bit harsh?
If you get on the Ice Queen's radar now, you're done for.
My work environment changed drastically after that.
James reassigned responsibilities, and for a few days, everyone in sales was busy greeting clients. I also spent my days checking in with the shops I had worried and transferring client information that I had been managing on behalf of my seniors.
Work became noticeably easier.
The senior staff, now managing larger clients, would say things like, "Ryan, your reputation is so good, so it's hard to follow up." Hearing this made me smile, feeling like all the hard work I had put in had finally been recognized.
Opinions on the personnel changes were varied, but I sensed Sophia's determination to reform the company in her own way.
Finally, the new structure was in place, and things were running smoothly.
One day,
I decided to reward myself after work by stopping by my favorite cafe. Usually, I drink instant coffee, so going to this cafe was the ultimate treat for me. As I headed in the opposite direction of home, I suddenly heard someone call out to me.
"Ryan? Are you still working?"
I turned around to see Sophia, apparently on her way home.
"Oh, no. I'm off work, too. Just making a little detour." "Where to?" "Oh, is it an adult?" "No, it's a cafe." Sophia's eyes immediately lit up.
She told me she hardly ever went to cafes. Since I still hadn't properly thanked her for nursing me, I decided to invite Sophia to join me at the cafe. On the way there, we barely talked about work.
In fact, I didn't feel like talking about it at all.
Walking beside me, Sophia was far from her Ice Queen persona, eagerly urging me to hurry up just like any other woman. The more I learned about Sophia, the more mysterious she became. But when we arrived at the cafe and started looking at the menu,
she stirred up my emotions even more. "Ryan, what's this?" "There's a cat on the cappuccino." "Ha, that's latte art." "Do you like cats?" "I love them." "Oh, what should I do?" "It's so cute, but how can I drink it?" "It's too adorable." "Ha, ha ha ha." "What?"
But it's just so.
Sophia, who was still smiling and gazing at the menu, looked absolutely adorable.
A woman as beautiful as her, giggling and getting excited like this, was drawing attention from people around us. But Sophia paid no mind to that and turned to me with a serious expression. "Ryan, the sandwich, is the bread shaped like
cats?" "Yes. I knew it." I have to order this. Ah, what should I do? I want to order everything just to look at them. She finally decided on her order, but even then, she kept excitedly talking while looking at the menu. I listened, laughing the whole time. When our food arrived, her excitement went through the roof. Ryan, do you think it's okay if I drink it? Ha, just try a little. Okay, huh? I drank some, but the cat is still there. Look, good latte art doesn't disappear until you finish your drink. When I said that, Sophia gasped in shock and exclaimed in awe. We had attracted so much attention that the barista came over to our table. Sophia, overwhelmed with excitement, used gestures to express how wonderful it was. The broad smile on her face was truly captivating. After finishing her conversation with the barista, she turned back to me, blushing, and said softly while looking up at me, I talked too much. At that moment, I was sure. I had fallen for Sophia. The strong woman she was at the office, and the adorable, smiling woman she was outside, both sides of her had completely captured my heart. Reluctantly, we left the cafe, and I offered to walk her to the station. She still couldn't stop talking about the cafe, chatting excitedly the whole way. As for me, after realizing my feelings, my heart was racing. Because who knew if I'd get another chance to spend time like this with Sophia again? Sophia. Oh, sorry. I kept rambling on again. Do you have a boyfriend? As soon as I asked that, Sophia stopped in her tracks. She didn't look at me when she replied. I don't have one, but why do you ask? Will you go out with me? Unable to hold back any longer, I blurted out my confession to her. Sophia remained silent, still not turning to face me. Then, in a tone as indifferent as when she was at work, she spoke. I don't have time to waste on things like romance. I'm not that free. Ryan, what have you been looking at when you see me at the office? With that, Sophia walked away without once looking back at me. I didn't expect things to go smoothly, but being rejected so clearly left me standing there for a while. Slowly, I turned and walked in the opposite direction. A week had passed since that day. I had been throwing myself into work to keep my mind occupied, desperate to drown out any stray thoughts. The damage from the rejection was far greater than I had imagined. But I had no regrets about confessing. Since that day, I hadn't seen Sophia at all, so that was probably my only chance. What puzzled me, though, was her question, "What have you been looking at when you see me?" I couldn't grasp its true meaning. Hey, Ryan. You're joining us tonight, right? Mark? For what again? Mark, a senior who had called out to me from a distance, maybe you gotta be kidding me gesture while laughing. Tonight's the company gathering. Folks from other departments will be there too, so you should join. Plus, the food's free. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I'll join. I had been so engrossed in work that I forgot tonight was the rare interdepartmental gathering. Connecting with people from other departments could be handy, but more than that, I held a faint hope that Sophia might be there. After work, I arrived at the inn, which was the venue for the event, a bit late. Mark called me over, and I joined the group. With such a large venue, it was tough to mingle with people from other departments, but there was a bit of a crowd gathering in one spot. At the center of it was Sophia. Seeing her for the first time in a week, she was as stunning as ever. She was being gracefully poured drinks by the bosses from various departments, her smile perfectly composed. The small crowd standing a little further away seemed to be watching her in awe, as if her presence alone was enough to keep the conversation going.
I wasn't in a position to approach or talk to her, so I watched from afar, feeling nostalgic for the smile I remembered from that day.
Then it happened. The MC called Sophia to the front of the room. As the crowd murmured, the MC eagerly continued with the event. All right, everyone, I hope you're all getting to know each other better. Now, it's time for the long-awaited recreation. And the one leading us tonight is none other than Sophia from the HR department. Please give her a warm welcome. The room buzzed with excitement at the unexpected news that Sophia would be leading the event. She was the company CEO's daughter, a beauty, and known as the Ice Queen. What could she possibly have in store for us? Sophia took the microphone, and everyone's attention was glued to her. I see everyone is enjoying themselves. That's good. On a personal note, I was talking with a friend recently, and we reaffirmed the importance of multilingualism. So, I have a quiz for all of you. Multilingualism? Something to do with English, perhaps? Many were confident in their English skills. The room focused even more intently on Sophia. She gave a slight smile as she posed her question. Please explain Chinese in a way that satisfies me. The room fell silent in an instant. Simply saying it's the language spoken in China, that wouldn't be enough. To satisfy Sophia, a graduate of a foreign language university, it would require much more. No one moved, and Sophia continued with a statement that stirred the room even more. Is there no answer that will satisfy me? If you get it right, I'll do anything for you. Even groveling, anything at all. The gathering, which had been momentarily frozen, suddenly became abuzz with excitement. Some were confused by the question, while others were fixated on the anything part. Everyone was trying to come up with an answer. If Sophia, of all people, said she'd do anything, it was no wonder the room was in an uproar. Her face, however, was calm and cold, not at all what one would expect for a company gathering. She scanned the room from the stage. I decided to break the tension and walk toward the stage where she stood. Even though she had rejected me, I couldn't stand the thought of someone else winning her over. Can I give it a try? Ryan, yes, go ahead. As I spoke while walking, the room erupted into murmurs. Someone said, "Isn't he a middle school graduate?" I stood in front of Sophia and took the microphone. Chinese is a collective term for about 56 different ethnic languages. What we usually refer to as Mandarin, which is like the standard language. Similar to what we would call standard Japanese. Then there's Beijing dialect, commonly used in the capital, Beijing. Sophia didn't change her expression but placed her hand on her chin. It probably meant that my answer was still lacking. I continued. Some of the more well-known dialects include Cantonese, Northeastern Mandarin, Hunan dialect, Sichuan dialect, and Shanghainese. Names like Shanghai and Canton might be familiar, but their intonations can be quite unique and challenging. At this point, Sophia interjected. Ryan, can you actually speak them? Well, Northeastern Mandarin is quite similar to Mandarin, so I can't speak it in detail. But I can switch between the others enough to be understood. I answered this in Chinese. Sophia seemed to understand a bit of it, but the crowd grew even more restless. Especially my colleagues in the sales department were utterly dumbfounded. As I scratched my head, wondering what to do next, Sophia approached me. She extended her hand for a handshake and asked, "Can you speak any others? I'm also fairly proficient in Italian." When I was doing volunteer work as a tour guide, I wanted to explain things better to foreign visitors.
so it was a lot of study and practice. That's beyond impressive.
Amazing. The winner is Ryan from the sales department. As Sophia and I shook hands, applause filled the room. Maybe only I noticed it, but Sophia had that beautiful smile on her face again. The party was winding down, and people were slowly preparing to leave. As I finished my meal and was about to head out, my seniors stopped me. Hey, Ryan. What are you gonna ask the Ice Queen to do for you?
Huh?
No, I think that was just to get the crowd going. What are you talking about? Don't waste this chance. You showed off some serious skills.
Hey, look, Sophia's looking this way. I looked up to see Sophia motioning for me to come over. My seniors nudged me forward with grins on their faces, and I stumbled toward Sophia.
She led me to the inn's lobby. We sat across from each other on the sofa,
and my heart suddenly began to race. I had been fine earlier, but now, being alone with her, all I could think about was how she had rejected me before. Seeing my nervousness, Sophia spoke quietly.
Have you decided what you want? Since I brought it up, I'm serious about this.
Her expression was as composed as if she were still at work. She took a sip of the coffee that had been brought over, then stared down at the cup. Watching her like that, I couldn't help but think back to that day at the cafe. The joy she showed at experiencing new things, the unrestrained delight in her smile. I realized again just how much I had fallen for her.
Can you just keep smiling?
What? I straightened my posture, looked directly into Sophia's eyes, and repeated myself.
I want you to keep smiling. That's what I want from you. I see.
I thought I was already smiling, but I'll try to do it more often.
Sophia gave me a stiff, almost forced smile and began to stand up. I realized this was my only chance again.
I had been hesitant to say this, but seeing Sophia as she was now, I couldn't hold back any longer.
I know you. You're a kind person. The face you show at work, it looks to me like you're hiding your pain. I understand you have a certain role to play as the CEO's daughter, but evaluating people, cutting them off, being resented. You have to wear the mask of the Ice Queen again and again. Don't talk like you know me. What do you understand? What do you think you know about me?
Sophia slammed both hands on the table, shouting at me. The coffee, which had barely been touched, splashed up, staining my suit.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, you're kind.
Sophia lowered her gaze, seemingly holding back something with great effort. She pulled a handkerchief from her pocket, took my arm, and silently began to wipe off the spilled coffee. I spoke to her quietly. Hearing my words, Sophia's hands froze in shock.
No, that's not possible. I thought so too. But it's true. It's something I'll never forget. We met once when we were students. It was back when I was in my third year of middle school. I was doing my usual volunteer work as a tour guide that day. Normally, I'd look for foreign tourists to approach, but that day coincided with a school trip. Some private school, probably. To me, they were just in the way. Neither useful for practicing language skills nor for earning tips. Maybe, in a way, I was comparing them to myself, someone who would neither go on school trips nor attend high school. Feeling that unsettling frustration spreading, I decided to call it a day early. I walked down a side street I usually didn't take, watching the sunset. And then it happened. Excuse me.
Huh? The one who called out to me was a student from the same school I'd seen earlier. She was sitting on the side of the road, petting a nearby cat as if to soothe her anxiety. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but what stood out was her cute face with a distinctive beauty mark.
No one else is coming this way, and my phone's battery is dead, and it's getting dark. Calm down. Are you lost?
Yes. Please help me, ugh. I decided to take her back to her hotel. Apparently, after getting separated from her group, she was approached by an elderly lady who was also looking for a shop. She could have just said she was a tourist too, but instead, she used her phone to look things up and walked at the elderly lady's pace. By the time they arrived at their destination, it was dark, and her phone was dead. So that's what happened.
You're just too good-natured.
But if I had left her, the old lady would have been lost.
I didn't want that, and if we're talking about being good-natured, doesn't that make you one too? It would be more strange to leave someone in that state alone. And, are you from around here? The way you talk is different from those other kids I saw.
Oh, I'm actually from around here. I wanted to try living in a dorm, so even though it's a school trip, for me, it's more like coming home.
Hearing that, I couldn't help but grin and burst out laughing. Well, you still got lost, didn't you? Don't say that.
In the quiet streets, where the sun had completely set, the only sound was our laughter echoing. It was just a short time, but it became a precious memory of my final days as a student. When we arrived at the hotel, she seemed like she wanted to say something at the end, but I headed straight home. I did think for a moment that I should have at least asked her name, but even if I had, we probably wouldn't have met again. That kind, good-natured girl was tucked away as a fond memory. As I reminisced about those days, I felt Sophia's grip on my arm tighten slightly.
I really can't believe it, I continued. Even after all these years, I recognized you.
The kindness I felt from you back then hadn't changed at all. Sophia let go of my arm and murmured,
I can't stay the same. I can't remain that naive child who didn't think about anything. I'm the only daughter of the CEO, Mr. Anderson. Being kind alone won't get me to the top of this company. That's why I chose to join the HR department. I wanted to handle all the tough decisions, even if it meant being called the Ice Queen. When I looked closely, I realized Sophia was on her knees, wiping my sleeve on the floor. I couldn't let such a kind person be alone.
Startled, Sophia let out a small yelp as I grabbed her under her arms and helped her up. Her eyes widened as she finally looked at me directly.
See, it's more reassuring to have someone with you than standing alone. Just like that day. Ryan.
As Sophia wobbled slightly from standing up too quickly, I gently caught her in my arms.
If you won't show it, then I'll force it out. Your smile, Sophia. Please, let me help you. There's more to helping this company than just letting people go. I won't let you cry alone anymore. Ryan.
Sophia leaned into me slightly, and I pulled her closer with the arm wrapped around her back. In the weeks that followed, Sophia and I stayed in close contact.
Sometimes we met over meals, discussing ideas about the company. There was something that had been on my mind for quite a while. Are you serious? Yes, I want to eliminate the CEO's office.
Even Sophia, who had grown fond of her cafe lattes, stopped drinking to take in what I was suggesting. I took a sip of my own coffee and continued.
Since my time as a part-timer, I've always thought this company has very few spaces for communication.
That feeling grew even stronger after I joined the sales department.
Work can't be done alone, especially in this industry where ideas are crucial. And ideas are born from communication. I see. So, getting rid of the CEO's office is just one aspect of that? Yes. While the final decisions rest with Mr. Anderson, if there's a large wall between him and the employees, even the best ideas might be held back. Authority is important, but. Sophia stared at the latte art in her cup. She then looked at me and gave a wry smile. Haha, you hit the nail on the head. I've been so focused on the reports and numbers. I just went along with things, too. That's why we're thinking together now. You're a strong ally. Sophia smiled warmly. We continued focusing on ways to improve communication within the company, brainstorming various ideas. And a month later, the marketing department has been struggling with this store, right? Any good ideas from the sales team? Actually, that store responds better to this approach. So if we change the strategy like this. Really? Wow, let's try that right away. In the refreshment room, employees from different departments were once again exchanging ideas. With more accessible social events starting up, connections between employees had grown. The CEO's office wasn't eliminated, but Mr. Anderson had started frequently walking around the company. It was surprising how many employees admitted they'd never seen the CEO's face since joining, but that was a thing of the past now. It became a common sight to see Mr. Anderson joining conversations among employees. The efforts to foster better communication yielded significant results. Ideas had been buried all over the company. Numerous new product ideas were in the works, thanks to feedback from administrative staff who, while not directly involved in product development, interacted with stationery products regularly. Sales also expanded contracts based on the information they gathered. The company underwent a significant transformation. It's all thanks to your input, Ryan. I'm really enjoying my work now. I'm glad to hear that. In the refreshment room, Sophia flashed me the smile I loved. With that, I felt the full success of the company's reform. Just as I was gearing up to work even harder, I was suddenly summoned by Mr. Anderson. For some reason, Sophia was called as well. Though I'd spoken with Mr. Anderson a few times, getting called in like this still made me nervous. After knocking, I entered the room, where Mr. Anderson sat, looking out the window. He turned to address us. Ryan. Sorry for interrupting your work. Come, have a seat. Yes. With Mr. Anderson and Sophia smiling on either side of me, my nerves only stiffened further instead of relaxing. I've been meaning to thank you properly, Mr. Anderson began. Sophia has told me everything. You've put in so much effort toward the internal reforms. I couldn't have accomplished this without you. I truly appreciate it. Thank you. As Mr. Anderson bowed deeply, I panicked. Even Sophia was bowing with a big smile on her face. Please, Mr. Anderson, stop. I just wanted to help Sophia. Ah, you're humble, just as I thought. Ryan. What? As if he had anticipated my reaction, Mr. Anderson began to recount a memory. It was right after Sophia's school trip, I believe. I received a long email. She said she got lost and someone helped her out. Though he was about the same age, he was a kind person who couldn't leave others in need. I had no idea she had told Mr. Anderson about that, and I turned to look at Sophia, who was now looking away, trying to hide her smile. Mr. Anderson continued, his smile growing wider. Ever since then, every time Sophia contacted me, she'd say things like, I wish I could meet him again, or I wonder if he's still around that area.
Then came the day when the HR department was discussing what to do with a young applicant who hadn't gone to high school and wanted to work full-time to support his family. Even as a part-timer, we had never hired someone like that before. Mr. Anderson looked at me intently, then straightened up. When I saw the resume, I immediately knew it was the same boy Sophia had spoken of. It seemed Sophia's judgment of character was spot on. The boy who helped Sophia ended up saving the company too. And for that, I owe Sophia my thanks as well. She's such a kind child. But I made her take on a role that nearly crushed that kindness. It was only when she started smiling again that I realized my own shortcomings. Father. Mr. Anderson stood up, a bit bashfully, and gently patted Sophia's head. Sophia, looking embarrassed herself, had tears welling up in her eyes. Watching the scene between father and daughter, I felt like I was witnessing a moment of reconciliation. But just then, as if they had planned it, they both turned to face me at the same time. Mr. Anderson spoke up energetically. So, Ryan, I ask you to continue looking after our company and Sophia. Ha? Well, he continued, I believe you would make a suitable husband for Sophia. Before he could finish, Sophia grabbed me and pulled me out of the office. I stood there in a daze while Sophia, her eyes cast downward, started babbling nervously. Ryan. My father can be a bit hasty, you know. You rejected me, remember? Well, that's not something I can cancel anymore, can I? Sophia said this while gently grabbing the sleeve of my suit. When I heard you talking about that postcard at your place, I thought, could it be? When I saw your sleeping face, I remembered the face I saw in the car's light that day when you escorted me back to the hotel. I was sure it was you. I've never been able to forget you. So when you confessed to me, I thought I was dreaming. You were my first love, after all. Her grip on my sleeve tightened. But I knew how others viewed me. I was the ice queen. I couldn't bring myself to accept your feelings so easily. Even after rejecting you like that, you treated me as you always did. I ended up relying on you, wanting to be with you. I know it's selfish of me to say this now, but wait a minute. Startled by my interruption, Sophia looked up at me. I released her grip on my sleeve and took her hand in mine. Can I cancel mine too? What? That confession from before, can I cancel it and start over? Sophia's face turned red, and she squeezed my hand tightly as she gazed into my eyes. I took a deep breath and looked right back at her. Will you marry me? Surprised by the word marry, Sophia's face flushed even more, and she began to fumble for words. But I didn't let go of her hand. Back then, I had realized there was such a kind-hearted person in this world, someone who couldn't leave others in need. She was my first love, someone I had never forgotten. Am I not good enough for you? Sophia? Sophia leaned her entire body into me, still holding my hand. She pressed her face against my chest and, almost in a whisper, replied, I want to walk beside you. My answer is, yes. I released her hand and gently embraced her, stroking her head. With her face buried in my chest, she laughed softly and wrapped her arms around my back. The next day, we spent a quiet moment in the refreshment room before starting work. A few other employees were around, doing the same. In a hushed voice, I asked Sophia about something that had been on my mind since yesterday. Hey, about that quiz at the company gathering. What would you have done if someone else had answered? You did say you'd do anything. I wasn't worried at all. I knew it would definitely be you, Ryan. Not satisfied with her straightforward answer, I pressed her further.
No way. You didn't even know I could speak those languages back then, right?
Sophia grinned mischievously and held her phone up to show me something.
What's this? Ha, I knew you didn't remember. It was probably when you were still in elementary school. I happened to read an interview with you in an international magazine. A cute kid introducing Japan in multiple languages.
I vaguely recalled a time when I was volunteering, still speaking in broken phrases, and someone interviewed me in English and took my picture. I had no idea it had actually been published. It says right here, I'm also learning Chinese and Italian, so please come visit Japan.
You said that years ago as a child. But you kept volunteering all this time. I knew you would follow through. Don't take such risks like that. Well, to be honest, I also knew a lot from looking at your resume.
Oh. I slumped back in my chair, feeling both amused and defeated.
Leaning back, I stared up at the ceiling and let out a laugh.
Seeing me like this, she put her coffee down and moved closer to my face, whispering in my ear.
But, you know, you're the only one I'd ever say, I'll do anything for you.
I looked at her bright smile and felt even more weak from how adorable my girlfriend was.
I slumped over the table for a while.
That single memory had been my anchor all these years. I used to think that living in nostalgia was a sign of weakness. But turning memories into strength to move forward, that's not weak at all. Those who can hold on to something in their hearts are the ones who can become truly strong.